So, all right, let's dip again. Let's talk about Gervonta.
Mhm.
Um, what's next for Gervonta? I actually just wrote a piece on Forbes about Gervonta, and I'm going to give you guys the headline of it. So if you want to look it up, but I said the numbers suggest that Gervonta Davis's appeal is rising, and he is boxing's next pay-per-view attraction. I pulled on some data from Peter and I's friends at Listen First,
Mm.
and they gave me some really solid data on social media interactions and impressions. Gervonta was a major thing happening before the fight, during the fight, and even after. And they actually even offered me a point of comparison. So check this out.
Did you publish it today or this
I
week?
did. I
Yeah.
think it was I think it was might have been yesterday.
Listen first. Just for those like you mentioned, it's a digital metrics platform.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's excellent information,
Excellent
like
information.
irrefutable.
Yep.
Which puts, like you said, like you're going to put it into context right now. So I'm excited to hear the comparison. I didn't read your story.
It was cool because they said, as a point of comparison, there were 69,000.4 tweets using the handle Manny Pacquiao between July 19th and 22nd of 2019 in the 4 days around his Keith Thurman fight. Gervonta drew 38,000 tweets mentioning his handle during the same time frame surrounding his fight with Ricardo Nunez.
Right.
So as they say, Gervonta isn't attracting Pacquiao levels of interest yet, but considering how much more well-known Pacquiao is, it's clear that Gervonta has a very impressive social footprint. Also,
absolutely.
He was fighting Ricardo Nunez,
I was just going to say that
Manny Pacquiao was fighting Keith Thurman. So
the level of the promotion and the machine behind it wasn't 10% of what went behind his most recent show.
Absolutely. I mean,
Gervonta, from a global perspective.
For sure.
Manny has a nation behind him.
Manny has a nation behind him. Gervonta's got Baltimore. So it's really a credit to Gervonta because he's got 1.7 million followers on Instagram, 99,000 followers on Facebook, and 196 followers on Twitter. And he's not even 25 yet. So this guy I think he is the next pay-per-view guy. I think he is.
I mean, listen, I know you're a big fan, and I like Gervonta, and he very well might be the next pay-per-view guy. I'm actually texting with his manager right now, and I'm trying to find out anything I could find out about what's next. But but he look, we need to see him fight the toughest guys, and you had alluded to this earlier. You threw out some names, but we need look, he might be the next big thing, right? And other than from a frame of reference, other than Pedraza, right? Who we could say, okay, was a world champion, high level guy. I mean, I understand he's devastatingly beating who's put in front of him. Although Fonseca gave him a bit of a fight, but Gervonta was, arguably out of shape, came in heavy. But I don't think we're doubting him because we're not doubting him, but we just want to see him start to fight those guys. And I think they're trying to figure out how to set that table because he's also in a division in which his promoter and his promoter's ally don't control necessarily. So,
I don't know. I feel like if I had to choose between, and obviously there's more choices out there than this, but I think these are the three guys that, and you could throw in a fourth, that if these were the next opponent for Gervonta, I think nobody would really be able to, to have a complaint. If he fights Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell Jr., Tevin Farmer, or Jamal Herring, or Miguel Burkett, which is the least likely because we're outside of the, but if he was to fight either of those guys, I think people would be fine with it. The Tevin Farmer fight seems to be the one that it's going to happen. That's where the conversation is trending. Um, Tevin Farmer was getting interviewed in the ring after he beat Frenois on the same night that Gervonta knocked out Ricardo Nunez, and he's talking, about Gervonta as well. But everybody is taking shots, saying Floyd's controlling your career. Tell Floyd to let you fight. Gary Russell Jr. said the same thing 2 months ago. But what that tells me is, here's the thing: fighters don't generally call out nobodies. They call out people who are on their level or people who are above their level.
They know they're all going to make a lot of money too,
and they're gonna make, because he's the guy to make the money to make the money with.
Right.
So
hey, listen, he's the guy because he's either the best or he's the guy because he's got the big following, and beating him would make you a big name. So there's many reasons, but there's no doubt that his star is on the rise. Burchelt and Herring won't happen for the same reasons that all the other fights we talk about won't happen. Right. Yeah. So that's not going to happen. Santa Cruz, I mean, be a heck of a fight. I'd like to see that, but I think that Farmer is probably the path, like you said earlier, the path of least resistance. With DeBella and Matchroom. And I think that's actually an interesting fight for Davis, because Farmer, being a good defensive fighter that
so
he is,
slick, yeah,
could make this. We don't know if he can take Davis's power, but it'll make it an intriguing fight.
Yeah, I think that's it. It really actually surprises me, right? That's the fight that they would be embracing. If I were running Tank's career and I was trying to get a high, a highly visible fight with an attractive opponent that I felt that Davis matched up well against, it would be Santa Cruz. First of all, Santa Cruz has to come up to fight him. Second of all, Santa Cruz isn't a extremely slick fighter, even at his weight class. And he's not even a big puncher at his weight class. He's a cumulative punishment kind of a guy. Right. So you're a cumulative punishment kind of guy coming up a weight, fighting a guy who is probably fast and almost certainly faster than you, right, and who hits like a ton of bricks. Right. You're bringing in the Mexican boxing community because you have Santa Cruz. I think honestly that's the fight to me that makes the most sense.
But Brian, with all things being equal, right? Let's just stay like out of the 130s, out of the 130 pounders, because then we can say, oh, well, 35 pounders should come down. You know what I mean? And then we can name some 35 pounders that should come down to meet them at 30. I mean, looking at the landscape of the 130 pound division, we already know Herring and Burchelt aren't going to be an option. Well, Farmer's the other guy.
Right. Absolutely. But
and that's probably what's going to happen.
I believe that's I believe that's going to happen too. But I only brung Gary Russell and Santa Cruz into the mix because both of them have mentioned Gervonta. Both of them had talked about being
their own selfish purposes.
Yeah, being willing to come up to 130. Especially Santa Cruz. I can easily see that being, because he's a taller 126 anyway. So it may be cutting down to 126 is tougher for him anyway. So coming, staying at 130 might feel even more natural. But I think that the Tevin Farmer fight is very interesting because he is so good defensively. And we really haven't seen Gervonta in there against people who could make him miss. So that's to me is going to be pretty interesting if it does happen. The fact that Floyd is mentioning his name, I think, is fairly positive, or fairly a good sign, pretty good sign that it may be actually happening. Floyd seems to be taking Floyd, the promoter, with Gervonta is interesting to watch, right? Because it's different. It's like a different kind of a persona than it is when he's promoting himself. So I find the dynamic pretty interesting. Like, he's more polite. He's more, just seems like he's far more soft-spoken as the promoter for Gervonta than he is for himself. So it's funny. It's kind of weird. But let's look at what we're talking about here in the chat.
Well, yeah. What does everyone else think?
Low key, New York says Tank needs to fight Farmer or he needs to move up. There are some people that don't dig Tank that much here. Ness Mendoza says Tank needs to fight a legit fighter. He says, don't get me wrong, Tank is good, but we need to see him fight a true, legit fighter. He says Tank versus Burns. I think he's talking about Ricky Burns. I think that would be Ricky Burns just getting pummeled. I don't think that Ricky Burns has a enough of a punch, and I don't think that he matches up well from a speed standpoint with Gervonta. I don't think that's especially, and Ricky Burns, I think, is compromised. He's been in a lot of tough fights. I don't think he's the same guy anymore anyway. So, and he'd have to come up anyway. Gervonta would have to come up to fight him too. That's a lot going on there. So I don't know about that one. Rodolph Vargas says, at least I think he's still dangerous to Canelo. Oh, he's talking about Kovalev. And see, Low-Key New York says that he thinks that the Farmer fight is a grudge match and makes for a good build-up for the fight. I definitely think that him and Gervonta seem to have a legitimate legitimate heat between the two. So I think it could be interesting leading up to it. But that's such a good fight. And Gervonta has such a it kind of a factor around him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think it needs all that much heat. You know, especially for a fight at that weight class, it kind of is what it is on one hand, and Gervonta already is bringing in a certain following anyway. Yeah, I just think that's a really good fight. Just that, you know, it's just a really good fight. So we'll see if it can happen. You see, Low-Key New York asks, can Cruz still make 126? Can Santa Cruz still make? See, that's my thing, man. I don't know if he can still make 126.
But I want to see him fight at 30 before
first.
Like, I mean, there are fighters that even I manage that, that will move up in weight, and I want to see them fight at that weight maybe one or two times. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
I mean, even in that case, it's 4 pounds. It's different. Okay. It's different than going from, 40 to 47. Right. Which is, a much bigger jump. 26 to 30, not as big, but nonetheless, you've got guys at 30 that are squeezing into 30.
Yeah.
Whereas, maybe Santa Cruz can't make 26, but 30 is going to be a piece of cake. Whereas someone like Davis might be squeezing into 30.
Yeah, I think he might be. I think he might be.
Right. Yeah. So, he very well, and there's no doubt Davis probably will be a 3-division world champion, maybe 30, 35, and 40. I don't know if his height will let him go beyond 40. But anyway, we definitely want to see him in some competitive fights, or at least against the other guys.
Yeah.
That have the names to see if they're competitive.
Yeah, definitely.
They may not be competitive.
They may not be. He might
blow them out. Yeah.
He might, but we need to find out.
Yeah, I want to see it.
We need to find out. Okay.